You wake up in the middle of the night because your leg is on fire. Not actually on fire, but it feels that way. 3 days ago, you cut it on a sharp rock while crossing a river. It wasn't deep. It wasn't even that painful at first. But now the skin around the cut is swollen, hot to the touch, and there's a red line creeping up toward your knee. You have no idea what that red line means. You just know it's getting worse. There's no hospital, no antibiotics, no painkillers, no doctor who can look at it and tell you what's happening inside your own body. There's just you, the fire, and whoever is sitting next to you. For 99% of human history, this was a completely normal Tuesday. No germ theory, no antiseptics, no surgery beyond what a sharpened rock could do. And yet humans survived. Not just survived, but survived long enough to build cities, write books, and eventually invent the medicine that makes a cut like that feel like nothing today. So how did anyone make it through hundreds of thousands of years without a single hospital? The answer isn't that ancient humans got lucky. It's that they figured out an enormous amount. They just didn't know why any of it worked. Let's start with wounds, because wounds were constant. Hunting accidents, animal bites, falls, burns from fire. Archaeologists have found something remarkable at multiple prehistoric sites. Evidence that people were treating injuries with plants long before anyone understood what a bacteria was. At the Shanidar cave site in Iraq, researchers found Neanderthal remains buried alongside pollen from yarrow, a plant still used today for its antiseptic and blood-clotting properties. Some researchers argue this was intentional medicine, not accident. Yarrow was not decoration. It stops bleeding and fights infection. And somehow, tens of thousands of years before anyone understood chemistry, someone figured that out through pure trial and error. Trial and error is the real engine here. Imagine thousands of generations, each one testing plants on wounds. Most attempts probably did nothing. Some made things worse. But every so often, someone applied a specific leaf to a cut and the swelling went down instead of up. That person told someone else. That person told their children. And slowly, without any concept of chemistry or microbiology, an entire pharmacy of working treatments built up purely through observation. Honey shows up constantly in this record. Ancient Egyptian medical texts, including the Edwin Smith papyrus from around 1600 BCE, describe using honey directly on wounds. We now know honey is genuinely antibacterial. It's low in moisture, which starves bacteria, and it produces hydrogen peroxide as it breaks down. Ancient healers had no idea why it worked. They just noticed that wounds packed with honey healed cleaner than wounds left alone, and they kept doing it for thousands of years. Then there's maggot therapy, which sounds horrifying until you understand the logic. Wounds that became infested with maggots sometimes healed better than clean wounds, because maggots eat dead, infected tissue and leave healthy tissue alone. Ancient and medieval healers who noticed this pattern started using maggots deliberately to clean deep wounds. It's disturbing, but it worked, and versions of maggot therapy are still used in modern hospitals today for exactly this reason. Cauterization was another brutal but effective tool. Heating a blade until it glowed, then pressing it against a wound to stop bleeding and kill bacteria through sheer heat. This technique shows up thousands of years ago across multiple cultures independently. It was agonizing, it also worked, because fire doesn't care whether you understand germ theory. It kills what's on the blade, either way. Now let's talk about the wound that terrifies everyone the most: skull injuries. Archaeologists have found thousands of prehistoric skulls with a hole deliberately cut or scraped into them, a procedure called trepanation. The oldest confirmed examples date back over 7,000 years, and here's the part that changes everything. Many of these skulls show clear signs of healing around the hole. Bone doesn't regrow like that after death. That means the person survived someone cutting into their skull with a sharpened stone, with no anesthesia beyond whatever plants or shock numbed the pain, and lived long enough afterward for new bone to form. Why would anyone do this? Some cases were almost certainly attempts to relieve pressure from head trauma, which is a real medical need trepanation genuinely addresses even today. Other cases may have been treatments for seizures or severe headaches, based on the belief that something needed to be released from inside the skull. We don't fully know the reasoning in every case, but the practice appears independently in cultures across Europe, Africa, and the Americas, separated by oceans and thousands of years. But wounds you can see. Disease is different. Disease comes for you with no warning and no visible cause, and that made it far more terrifying to ancient people than any wound ever could be. This is where one frozen body changed everything we thought we knew. In 1991, hikers in the Alps found a corpse sticking out of melting ice. His name became Ötzi, and he had been frozen there for roughly 5,300 years. Scientists found something nobody expected: 2 species of medicinal fungi strung on a leather cord like essential supplies. One was birch polypore, a fungus with natural antibacterial and anti-parasitic properties. Researchers later found whipworm eggs in Ötzi's intestines. A man who lived over 5,000 years ago appears to have been carrying medicine for the exact parasite infecting his own gut. That's not a coincidence. That's pharmacology. And Ötzi isn't alone. Scientists studying dental calculus, the hardened plaque on ancient teeth, have found microscopic traces of medicinal plants trapped there for tens of thousands of years. One famous case involves a Neanderthal from El Cidrón in Spain, whose fossilized plaque contained traces of chamomile and yarrow, bitter, nutritionally useless, and known for medicinal rather than food use. Researchers believe this individual was self-medicating for an intestinal illness, which means Neanderthals, a species we spent decades dismissing as brutish cavemen, were identifying and treating their own symptoms with plants chosen for how they made the body feel, not how they tasted. Fever was managed constantly, and the toolkit was surprisingly consistent across cultures that had zero contact with each other. Willow bark shows up again and again, chewed or brewed into a bitter tea to bring down fever and ease pain. It contains a compound called salicin, which the body converts into something remarkably close to modern aspirin. Nobody in the ancient world knew that. They just knew a person burning up with fever felt better after chewing the right bark, and that observation got repeated for thousands of years, from ancient Sumer to ancient Egypt to indigenous groups in North America. Fever itself was often treated with cooling, rest, and herbal sweating remedies, which some traditional healers correctly associated with the body fighting something off, even without any concept of an immune system. Here's the detail that surprises most people. Isolation. Separating a sick person from the group is functionally identical to what we now call quarantine, and it shows up independently in societies with zero germ theory. They didn't know about pathogens. They just noticed that when a sick person was kept apart, fewer people around them got sick. Parasites were another constant, quiet threat. Evidence from ancient latrines and preserved feces shows intestinal worms were extraordinarily common. Some plant remedies used against them have since been shown in modern lab studies to have genuine anti-parasitic properties. Ancient healers had no microscopes, but they could see symptoms disappear when the right plant was used consistently, and that was proof enough. Here's the part almost nobody talks about, though. Ancient humans didn't just treat illness with plants, they treated it with people. In that same Shanidar cave in Iraq, archaeologists found a skeleton known as Shanidar I, an elderly Neanderthal man who lived roughly 45,000 years ago. His body tells a brutal story. Blind in one eye, right arm amputated or withered decades before death, healed fractures throughout, and severe arthritis that would have made walking difficult. This man could not hunt, could not fully defend himself, could not have survived alone. Yet he lived for years, possibly decades after his injuries. Someone fed him, someone helped him move. In the animal kingdom, injuries like his are usually a death sentence within days. Here, they weren't. This pattern repeats across the fossil record. Skeletons showing survival after tooth loss, meaning someone chewed or softened food for them. Skeletons showing healed but severely displaced fractures, meaning someone kept that person fed and protected through months of recovery. Care wasn't a side effect of ancient life. It was infrastructure. an investment the group chose to make again and again, long before anyone wrote down a single medical text. Now here's the part that gets left out of most of these stories: the brutal reality. For every success we can point to, there were far more failures we can't count. Skeletal evidence shows widespread untreated infections, poorly healed fractures, and abscessed teeth that likely killed people slowly and painfully. Childbirth alone killed enormous numbers of women. The plants that worked were remembered. The ones that didn't, and the people who died trying them, mostly disappeared from the record. This is survivorship bias in its rawest form. We're looking at the recipes that survived thousands of years of editing by death.
Life expectancy at birth in prehistoric populations is often estimated around 25 to 35 years, but that number is misleading. It's dragged down heavily by infant and child mortality. If you made it past childhood, your odds of reaching your 50s or 60s were actually reasonable. The danger wasn't old age, it was infection, childbirth, and violence, the exact three things modern medicine has done the most to solve. So who was actually holding all this knowledge together? In most ancient and traditional societies, it lived with specific people, often called shamans, healers, or medicine men and women, who held encyclopedic memorized knowledge of which plants treated which symptoms, passed down orally with zero written records. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or various Amazonian tribes have documented healers who can identify hundreds of medicinal plants by name, along with exact preparation methods and dosages. Becoming a healer wasn't casual. It often took years of apprenticeship, memorizing not just which plant to use, but exactly how much, prepared exactly how, because the same plant that healed in one dose could poison in another. The line between remedy and poison was often a matter of precise quantity, and getting that quantity right, with no written measurement system, required memorized precision built over a lifetime. That knowledge died with the healer if it wasn't passed on in time, which is exactly why oral transmission was treated as a matter of survival, not just tradition. This is actually where modern medicine owes a debt it doesn't always acknowledge. Aspirin traces back to willow bark. Quinine, one of the first effective malaria treatments, came from the bark of a tree used by indigenous peoples in South America. Modern chemistry didn't invent these cures from nothing. It found the working end of a folk remedy and figured out the mechanism underneath it. So when you put it all together, ancient humans weren't defenseless. They had antiseptics. They had wound cleaning techniques, they had brain surgery, they had quarantine, they had an oral pharmacy for parasites and fevers, and they had each other. What they didn't have was an explanation. They didn't know what bacteria were, they didn't know why honey worked, or why yarrow stopped bleeding. They just knew it did, and that was enough to keep passing the knowledge forward. What changed everything wasn't a single invention, it was germ theory, developed in the 1800s, which finally explained the why behind thousands of years of accumulated trial and error. Suddenly, people understood that invisible organisms, not evil spirits or bad air, caused infection. That single shift in understanding is arguably responsible for saving more human lives than anything else in our entire history, because it turned folk remedies into engineered medicine and made it repeatable, scalable, and precise. Which brings us back to that fire in your leg. In the world we just described, that infection spreading up toward your knee could realistically kill you within a week. Today, you'd take a 10-day course of antibiotics you picked up in 15 minutes at a pharmacy and forget the whole thing happened by the following month. The gap between those two realities is not thousands of years of gradual improvement. It's mostly the last 150 years. Somewhere back in your ancestry, someone survived an infection exactly like that one, packed with the right leaf, cared for by someone who refused to let them die, or maybe just lucky. And that person passed on whatever they knew, one more link in an unbroken chain that eventually led to you complaining about a headache while a bottle of ibuprofen sits 4 feet away in your kitchen. They didn't have the why, they just had what worked. And each other. And that was enough to get you here.